They thought she was broken. They thought she was destitute. The Sterling family invited Sarah back into their lives for one reason only: to laugh at her misery as her ex-husband married a younger, wealthier woman. Beatrice Sterling, the cruel matriarch, even set a place for Sarah at the servants' table just to twist the knife. But she made a fatal calculation. She didn't know that Sarah wasn't coming alone. When the church doors swung open, Sarah didn't walk in with tears. She walked in with 3 identical boys who looked exactly like the groom. And the secret she's been hiding for 4 years is about to turn this perfect wedding into a battlefield. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, and smelled faintly of expensive lavender perfume, a scent that Sarah O'Connor knew all too well. It was the scent of Beatrice Sterling, the woman who had made her life a living hell for 3 years. Sarah stood in the foyer of her modern glass-walled penthouse in downtown Seattle, turning the envelope over in her hands. The calligraphy was impeccable, gold ink shimmering under the chandelier light. Mr. Liam Sterling and Miss Tiffany Banks request the honor of your presence. Sarah let out a dry, humorless laugh. Liam, the man who had promised to love her forever, only to stand by silently while his mother, Beatrice, picked her apart, piece by piece. Liam, who had signed the divorce papers 4 years ago without even looking her in the eye, handing her a pitiful settlement check that Beatrice had thrown at her feet like she was paying off a maid. "Mummy, who is that from?" Sarah looked down. Tugging at her silk pajama pants was Leo, one of her 4-year-old triplets. Behind him, Sam and Max were building a fortress out of pillows on the living room rug. They had Liam's eyes, that piercing, icy blue, and his dark, wavy hair. But they had Sarah's chin, her stubbornness, and her heart. "It's just some junk mail, sweetie," Sarah said softly, ruffling Leo's hair. "Go play with your brothers." She walked into the kitchen and tossed the invite onto the marble island. Her assistant, a sharp-witted woman named Chloe, looked up from her tablet. "Let me guess," Chloe said, eyeing the gold lettering. "The Sterlings?" "Beatrice," Sarah corrected, pouring herself a glass of water to settle the sudden churning in her stomach. "She invited me to Liam's wedding. It's next Saturday at the Sterling estate in the Hamptons." Chloe scoffed. "Why, didn't they kick you out with nothing but a suitcase? Why would they want you there?" "To gloat," Sarah said, her voice hardening. "Beatrice wants to show me what I missed out on. She wants to rub it in my face that Liam is marrying Tiffany Banks, the senator's daughter. Old money. The kind of girl Beatrice always wanted for him. She thinks I'm still the broke, struggling waitress Liam met 5 years ago. She has no idea." Sarah walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline. 4 years ago, she had left the Sterling estate in a rusted sedan, pregnant and terrified. She hadn't told Liam about the babies. Why would she? Beatrice had accused her of being a gold digger, of trapping Liam. If she had revealed the pregnancy then, Beatrice would have either taken the children or made sure Sarah never saw a dime of support while making her life a legal nightmare. So Sarah had run. She had struggled, but she had also survived. And then she had thrived. She had used the last of her savings to start a small boutique marketing firm. It had been grueling, working 18-hour days with 3 newborns strapped to her chest. But then came the breakthrough, a viral campaign for a tech giant that put her on the map. Then another. Then a merger. Now, Sarah O'Connor wasn't just a waitress. She was the CEO of O'Connor and Associates, one of the most sought-after branding agencies on the West Coast. Her net worth likely tripled the Sterling family's dwindling fortune, though they didn't know that. To them, the Sterlings were still royalty, and she was still the peasant. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Hope you received the invite," Mother insisted. "We thought you could use a free meal. Dress code is black tie, but try to do your best. Liam." Sarah stared at the screen. It wasn't Liam. Liam was weak, but he wasn't cruel. That text had Beatrice written all over it. "They think I'm starving," Sarah whispered, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. Chloe watched her boss, recognizing that look. It was the look Sarah got right before she closed a multi-million-dollar deal. "Sarah, what are you thinking?" Sarah picked up the invitation again. She ran her finger over the embossed date. "They want a show," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. They invited the ex-wife to humiliate her, to sit her in the back and laugh. Beatrice wants to prove she won. She turned to look at the boys, who were now laughing as they toppled the pillow fort. 3 beautiful, healthy heirs to the Sterling name, kept secret for 4 long years. "Chloe," Sarah said sharply, "clear my schedule for next weekend, and call the stylist. I need a dress, not just a dress. I need a weapon made of silk." "And the boys?" Chloe asked. Sarah looked at her sons. "Get them suits, custom-tailored. If Beatrice wants a family reunion, I think it's time she met her grandsons." The Sterling estate in the Hamptons was exactly as Sarah remembered it, ostentatious, imposing, and cold. The sprawling lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. A massive white tent had been erected near the cliffs overlooking the ocean, adorned with thousands of white roses. It was a display of wealth meant to intimidate. Inside the preparation suite, Beatrice Sterling adjusted her diamond necklace in the mirror. She was 60, but with enough surgery to pass for a frozen 50. Her eyes were sharp, predatory. "Is she here?" Beatrice asked, not turning around. Liam, standing by the window in his tuxedo, looked pale. He swirled a glass of scotch, his hand trembling slightly. "I don't know, Mother. I still think this was a bad idea. Why invite Sarah? It's petty." "It's closure, Liam," Beatrice snapped, turning to face him. "And it's a reminder. Tiffany is perfect. She comes from a good line. She brings connections. Sarah was a mistake, a stain on our history. I want you to see her today, in her cheap department store dress, looking tired and old. And I want you to realize how much I saved you." "She hasn't responded to the text," Liam muttered. "Maybe she won't come." "She'll come," Beatrice sneered. "People like her never turn down an open bar and a chance to rub elbows with the elite. I put her at table 19, by the kitchen doors, next to the bathroom." Liam sighed, looking out at the guests arriving in Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. He loved Tiffany, sure. She was beautiful, safe, and his mother approved. But a small part of him still thought of Sarah. The way she used to laugh, the way she looked at him before the money and his mother got in the way. Meanwhile, a mile down the road, a convoy of 3 blacked-out Cadillac Escalades was moving steadily toward the estate. Inside the lead vehicle, Sarah sat calmly. She was wearing a dress that cost more than the average American car, a custom Versace gown in deep emerald green, backless, that hugged her figure like liquid glass. Her hair was swept up in an intricate modern style, revealing diamond drop earrings that caught the light with every movement. But the real showstoppers were next to her. Leo, Sam, and Max sat in their car seats, looking like miniature princes. They wore matching velvet tuxedos, Leo in midnight blue, Sam in deep burgundy, and Max in forest green. They looked expensive. They looked powerful. "Remember what we practiced?" Sarah asked, looking back at them. "Be polite," Leo said. "Don't run," Sam added. "Stick together. Max finished. "Good boys." The car slowed as it reached the security checkpoint at the estate gates. The guard, holding a clipboard, peered into the window as the driver rolled it down. "Name?" "Sarah O'Connor," the driver said. The guard scanned the list. He frowned. "I have a Sarah O'Connor listed for parking lot B, shuttle service." Sarah pressed a button, and the back window rolled down smoothly. She lowered her designer sunglasses and looked the guard in the eye. "Open the gate," she said softly. It wasn't a request. It was an order given with the authority of someone who commanded boardrooms. The guard stammered, taken aback by the sheer aura radiating from the car. He didn't argue. He waved them through. As the convoy rolled up the long gravel driveway, heads began to turn. The guests were mingling on the lawn for the pre-ceremony cocktails. They were expecting the usual limos. They weren't expecting a security detail. The cars came to a halt right in front of the main entrance to the garden, a spot reserved for the bridal party. "Hey, you can't park there!" A wedding planner with a headset shrieked, running over. The driver of the first car ignored her, stepping out to open the rear door. A hush fell over the crowd nearby. Beatrice, who had just stepped out onto the terrace with a glass of champagne, squinted. "Who is that?" "The senator." The door opened. First, a pair of Christian Louboutin heels hit the gravel. Then, Sarah stepped out. She stood to her full height, smoothing the emerald silk. She looked radiant. She looked like a movie star. She looked nothing like the weeping girl who had been dragged out of this house 4 years ago. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. "Is that? No, it can't be." "Who is she wearing? Is that vintage?" Beatrice's glass froze halfway to her lips. She didn't recognize Sarah at first. The woman she remembered was plain, wearing off-the-rack floral dresses. This woman was a goddess of vengeance. But the real shock came a second later. Sarah turned back to the car and held out her hand. "Come on, boys." One by one, they hopped out. Leo, Sam, Max. The crowd gasped audibly. It was undeniable. The dark hair, the set of the jaw, and when they looked up, blinking in the sunlight, 3 pairs of sterling blue eyes scanned the crowd. They were carbon copies of Liam Sterling at age 4. Beatrice dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the stone terrace, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Liam, who had come up behind his mother, grabbed the railing, his face drained of all color. He looked at the boys, then at Sarah, then back at the boys. The math hit him like a physical blow. 4 years. Sarah adjusted Max's bow tie, then looked up toward the terrace. She locked eyes with Beatrice. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stared with a cool, calm intensity that sent a shiver down Beatrice's spine. Sarah took the hands of her sons, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, and began to walk toward the ceremony seating. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. "Mommy," Leo whispered loudly, his voice carrying in the silence. "Is that the daddy you told us about? The one on the balcony?" Sarah didn't look up. "We're just here to watch a show, baby. Keep walking." She didn't head for table 19 near the bathrooms. She walked straight to the front row, the side designated for the groom's family. An usher, a young man who looked terrified, stepped in her path. Mom, this is reserved for immediate family." Sarah looked at him, then gestured to the 3 boys standing beside her, who were currently staring at the altar with bored expressions. "I think you'll find," Sarah said, her voice smooth as velvet but sharp as a razor, "that there is no one here more immediate than his sons." She sat down, and the wedding of the century began to crumble before the first note of the wedding march was even played. The air in the front row was so thick with tension it felt like it could snap a steel beam. The other guests in the first few rows, a collection of senators, tech moguls and old money socialites, were pretending to look at their programs, but every ear was cocked toward Sarah. Beatrice Sterling did not run. She marched. Her heels clicked sharply on the stone pavers as she descended from the terrace, her face a mask of contorted rage barely concealed beneath layers of expensive makeup. She reached the end of the aisle where Sarah sat, looking like an emerald queen on a throne, flanked by her 3 princes. "What is the meaning of this?" Beatrice hissed, her voice low and trembling. She leaned in, smelling of champagne and desperation. "How dare you? I invited you to sit in the back and learn your place, not to turn my son's wedding into a circus." Sarah didn't even uncross her legs. She smoothed the lapel of Sam's velvet jacket. "Hello, Beatrice. You look tight. Is that a new surgeon?" Beatrice flushed a deep, ugly red. "Get out, now. Take these children and leave before I have security drag you out." "I wouldn't do that," Sarah said calmly, finally looking up. Her eyes were cold. "You sent the invitation. I have the RSVP confirmation right here on my phone. And as for dragging us out, do you really want a scene? Look around, Beatrice. The senator is watching. Judge Harrison is watching. If your security touches a single hair on my head or on my children, I'll sue you for assault in front of half the Hamptons elite. And I have the money to win now." Beatrice faltered. She looked around. Sarah was right. The guests were watching with hungry eyes. A scene would be social suicide. "Who are they?" Beatrice whispered, her gaze flickering to the boys. She couldn't help it. The resemblance was assaulting her senses. "They're my dates," Sarah said simply. Just then, Liam arrived at the end of the aisle. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He stopped 3 feet away, his eyes locked on the triplets. Max, the boldest of the 3, looked up at Liam. He tilted his head, a gesture that was so painfully identical to Liam's that a gasp went through the nearby pews. "Mommy," Max said, tugging Sarah's hand. "He looks like me." Liam flinched as if he'd been slapped. "Sarah," he croaked. His voice was dry, devoid of the arrogance he had carried 4 years ago. "Sarah, tell me, are they what, Liam?" Sarah challenged, her voice rising just enough for the first 3 rows to hear. "Are they the children you didn't want?" "No, that's not right. You didn't know about them because you were too busy moving your mistress into our bedroom before the ink was dry on the divorce papers." "Mistress?" A woman in the second row whispered, scandalously. That was the narrative Beatrice had tried to bury, that Tiffany and Liam had met after the divorce. I didn't know," Liam stammered. He looked at Leo, then Sam, then Max. He saw his own chin, his own brow. He saw the Sterling legacy staring back at him ×3. Tears welled up in his eyes. "How old?" "4, Sarah said. "They turned 4 last week. Does the math work for you, Liam? Or do you need a calculator?" "This is a trick," Beatrice interjected, stepping between Liam and the boys. She grabbed Liam's arm, her nails digging into his tuxedo. "Don't be a fool, Liam. She hired them. She went to a casting agency to find lookalikes, just to ruin your big day. She's a jealous, vindictive little gold digger." "Grandma is scary," Sam whispered loudly to Leo. The crowd tittered. Beatrice whipped her head around to glare at the child, but stopped. Sam was frowning. A specific, brooding frown that Beatrice had seen on her own husband's face for 40 years. It was a genetic stamp that couldn't be faked. "We are starting," Beatrice snapped, realizing she was losing control of the narrative. "Liam, get to the altar. The music is starting. Sarah, if you make one sound, one single sound, I will destroy you." Sarah smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't need to make a sound, Beatrice. The truth speaks for itself." The organ music swelled. The wedding march began. Beatrice practically shoved Liam toward the altar. He stumbled, looking back over his shoulder at the boys until he nearly tripped over the flower arrangements. He took his place at the altar, but he wasn't looking down the aisle for his bride. He was staring at the front row. The doors to the estate opened, and Tiffany Banks stepped out. She was undeniable perfection. Her dress was a Vera Wang, custom, lace and tulle, with a train that went on for days. She held a bouquet of white orchids. Her father, Senator Banks, looked proud as he offered her his arm. But as they began the long walk down the aisle, Tiffany noticed something was wrong. Usually, at a wedding, all heads turn toward the bride. The guests smile, they dab their eyes, they whisper about how beautiful she looks. But today, half the guests were looking at the front row. They were craning their necks to see the woman in the green dress and the 3 little boys. Tiffany kept her smile plastered on, but her eyes darted to the side. Who is that? She wondered. And why is Liam staring at them? She reached the altar. Liam took her hand, but his palm was sweating profusely. He was trembling. "You okay?" she whispered through her teeth as the priest began the opening prayer. "Yeah," Liam breathed, though he looked like he was about to vomit. The priest, an elderly bishop who had known the Sterling family for decades, droned on about sanctity and loyalty. The words rang hollow. Then came the silence before the vows. The estate was quiet, save for the sound of the ocean crashing against the cliffs below. "I'm hungry," Leo announced. It wasn't a scream. It was just a clear, bored statement of a 4-year-old in a silent room. "Shh," Sarah said gently, handing him a cracker from her clutch. The sound of the wrapper crinkling seemed to echo like a gunshot. Beatrice, sitting in the mother-of-the-groom seat across the aisle, looked ready to explode. She signaled to the security guard standing in the shadows. She made a cutting motion across her throat. "Get them out!" The guard began to move toward Sarah. Sarah saw him coming. She didn't flinch. She simply stood up. The movement caused the entire congregation to gasp. They thought she was objecting. "Sit down," Beatrice hissed, forgetting to whisper. Sarah ignored her. She looked at the guard, raised a hand to stop him, and then looked directly at Liam. "Liam," Sarah said. She didn't shout, but her voice carried clearly. "Your mother is sending a guard to remove your sons. Is that how you want to start your marriage? By kicking your own flesh and blood out into the street? Again?" The priest stopped speaking. Tiffany dropped Liam's hand. "Sons," Tiffany repeated, her voice shrill. She turned to Liam. "Liam, what is she talking about?" "It's a lie!" Beatrice shrieked, jumping to her feet. "She's a liar. Security, remove her." "It's not a lie." A deep voice boomed from the back of the wedding tent. Everyone turned. Walking down the aisle was an older man with silver hair and a stern face. It was Dr. Alistair Sterling, Liam's uncle, the black sheep of the family who had been estranged from Beatrice for years. He was a renowned geneticist. "Uncle Alistair," Liam whispered. "I saw the boys in the parking lot," Alistair said, walking toward the front. He stopped and looked at the triplets. "And I know the Sterling condition when I see it." He pointed to the boys. "Heterochromia iridum. Partial." Sarah nodded. She touched Leo's face. "Show them, baby." Leo blinked. In the bright sunlight it was visible. His left eye was a piercing blue, but there was a distinct fleck of gold in the iris. "Liam has it," Alistair said, turning to the crowd. "My father had it. It's a rare genetic trait, specific to our bloodline. Unless this woman managed to find 3 child actors who all happen to have the rare Sterling eye defect. These are your children, Liam." The silence that followed was absolute. Tiffany stepped back, her veil trembling. She looked at Liam's eyes, the eyes she had fallen in love with, and then looked at the boys. The gold fleck. It was there. "You have children," Tiffany whispered. "Triplets, and you didn't tell me." "I didn't know," Liam cried, his defense crumbling. "She left. She never told me." "Because your mother threatened to destroy me if I didn't leave," Sarah cut in, her voice sharp and authoritative. "Because she told me I was trash. Because she told me you never loved me. I was pregnant, Liam. I was scared. And I knew that if Beatrice found out, she would have taken them and raised them to be just like her, cold, heartless, and cruel. So I saved them." She looked at the boys, who were happily eating crackers, oblivious to the fact that they had just dismantled a dynasty. "I didn't come here to stop the wedding," Sarah lied smoothly. "I came because Beatrice insisted. She wanted to show off. Well, consider the show started." Senator Banks, Tiffany's father, stood up. He was a large man, red-faced with anger. He walked up to the altar, grabbed Liam by the lapels of his tuxedo, and shoved him backward. "You bring shame to my daughter," the senator roared. "You have a secret family, illegitimate children." "They aren't illegitimate," Sarah corrected him, her voice ringing out. "They were conceived in wedlock. They are the legitimate heirs to the Sterling estate. And legally, they are entitled to quite a lot." Beatrice let out a strangled cry and collapsed back into her chair, clutching her chest. But no one rushed to help her. They were too busy watching the train wreck. Tiffany looked at Liam, then at Sarah. She looked at the boys. 3 beautiful, innocent ankles that tied Liam to his ex-wife forever. "I can't do this," Tiffany said. She ripped the veil from her head. "Tiff, wait!" Liam pleaded, reaching for her. "Don't touch me!" she screamed. "You're a liar and your mother is a monster! I'm not playing stepmother to triplets on my wedding day." She gathered her massive skirt and ran back down the aisle, sobbing. Her father and mother chased after her, casting hateful glares at the Sterling family. The guests began to murmur, then talk loudly. Phones were out. People were recording. The hashtag "Was it a Sterling wedding disaster" was probably already trending. Liam stood alone at the altar. He looked destroyed. Slowly he turned his head and looked at Sarah. Sarah stood there, calm and composed. She looked down at her boys. "Well," Sarah said, checking her diamond watch. "That was shorter than I expected. Boys, say goodbye to your father." "Bye, Daddy." Max waved cheerfully with a cracker in his mouth. Sarah turned on her heel, the emerald dress swirling around her, and began to walk away, leading her sons back down the aisle toward the exit. But the drama wasn't over. As she reached the midway point of the aisle, Liam's voice rang out, desperate and broken. "Wait! Sarah, please! Don't take them!" He jumped off the altar and ran after her. Sarah stopped. She didn't turn around immediately. She signaled the driver of the lead Escalade to wait, then gestured for Chloe to take the boys into the car. "Go with Chloe," she said softly. "Mommy needs to say one last thing." "Is the sad man coming?" Leo asked, looking back at Liam, who was sprinting across the lawn, his tuxedo jacket flapping in the wind. "Yes, baby, get inside. Watch Bluey on the screens." As the heavy door thudded shut, sealing the boys in their soundproof, bullet-resistant bubble, Liam skidded to a halt on the gravel. He was out of breath, his hair wild, sweat beading on his forehead. "Sarah!" he gasped, reaching out but stopping short of touching her. He looked at the tinted windows of the SUV. They really are mine." Sarah turned slowly. "They are mine, Liam. I grew them. I birthed them. I fed them. I sat up with them when they had fevers. You? You were just a donor." "I would have been there," Liam cried, his voice cracking. "If I had known. If you had known, your mother would have forced a paternity test before they were even born," Sarah said coldly. She would have dragged me through court. She would have stressed me out so much I might have lost them. I wasn't going to risk their lives for your ego. Beatrice arrived a moment later, flanked by 2 security guards, but she wasn't shouting anymore. She was panting, her face a mask of calculation. She looked at the luxury SUVs, really looked at them for the first time. She noticed the security detail. She noticed Sarah's jewelry. "You hid my grandsons," Beatrice said, her voice low and dangerous. "You stole the Sterling heirs." "I protected my children from a toxic environment," Sarah corrected. Beatrice straightened her spine, smoothing her dress. The shark was circling. "Well, the secret is out now, and you can't keep them from us. They are Sterlings. They belong at the estate. They need to be raised with their heritage, not wherever you have them living." "They live in a penthouse overlooking the Space Needle," Sarah said dryly. "They're doing just fine." Beatrice let out a dismissive scoff. "Please, I know you, Sarah. You're likely living off credit cards and some pitiful alimony settlement, trying to look rich to impress us. But lawsuits are expensive. Custody battles are expensive." Beatrice stepped closer, pulling a checkbook from her clutch. It was a power move she had used 1,000 times. "Let's be reasonable," Beatrice said, clicking her pen. "You're a waitress at heart. You want security? Fine. I will write you a check right now for $5 million. In exchange, you sign full custody over to Liam. You can have visitation rights. Supervised, of course. Weekends, holidays." Liam looked at his mother, shocked. "Mother, you can't just buy them." "Quiet, Liam," Beatrice snapped. "I'm fixing your mess." She looked back at Sarah. $5 million. You can start over. Find a nice man your own speed. Leave the raising of the elite to us." Sarah stared at the checkbook. Then she started to laugh. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It was a genuine, amused chuckle. $5 million? Sarah asked, tilting her head. "Beatrice, that's adorable." $10 million, Beatrice countered, her eyes narrowing. "Don't push your luck." Sarah took a step forward, invading Beatrice's personal space. The scent of her expensive perfume overpowered Beatrice's champagne breath. "Beatrice, I made $10 million last Tuesday before lunch," Sarah whispered. Beatrice froze. "What?" "My company, O'Connor and Associates, just handled the rebranding for the new quantum tech merger. My personal net worth is currently hovering around $80 million. And it's climbing." Sarah reached out and gently plucked the checkbook from Beatrice's stunned hands. She tapped it against Beatrice's cheek, patronizingly. "I don't need your money. I could buy this estate, burn it to the ground, and build a parking lot for my employees without checking my bank balance. So keep your check. You're going to need it for the legal fees." Sarah turned to Liam, whose jaw was practically on the gravel. "You wanted a wedding, Liam," Sarah said. "You got a funeral instead. Goodbye." She turned and got into the SUV. "Sarah," Liam shouted, banging on the window as the car started. "Sarah, please, I want to know them." The car didn't stop. The convoy moved smoothly down the driveway, kicking up dust, leaving the Sterling family standing in the ruins of their perfect day. The fallout was nuclear. By Monday morning, the photos of the triplets were on the cover of every tabloid in the country. "Secret Sterling triplets crash wedding" was the headline on the New York Post. "The ex-wife's revenge," screamed TMZ. Sarah's phone rang off the hook, but she had a team for that. She sat in her office in Seattle, looking at the digital projections for her Q3 earnings. She was calm. Beatrice Sterling, however, was at war. Humiliated and exposed, Beatrice did the only thing she knew how to do: attack. On Wednesday, Sarah was served with papers. Emergency custody motion. Sterling v. O'Connor. Beatrice and Liam were suing for full custody, alleging parental alienation, fraud, and emotional distress. They claimed Sarah was unfit because she had maliciously concealed the children's existence. It was a weak case, and they knew it, but Beatrice's strategy was always to bleed the opponent dry. She hired the most aggressive sharks in New York, the firm of Blackwood and Associates. Sarah read the papers at her desk, sipping a green smoothie. "They want a war," Sarah murmured. "They scheduled a deposition for Friday," Chloe said, looking at the calendar. "They want you in New York. They're trying to disrupt your business." "Book the jet," Sarah said, "and call my lawyer. Tell him to bring the red file." Friday. The deposition. The conference room at Blackwood and Associates in Manhattan was lined with mahogany and smelled of intimidation. Beatrice sat at the head of the table, looking smug. Liam sat next to her, looking tired and unshaven. He hadn't slept in days. Sarah walked in wearing a white power suit that cost more than the lawyer's car. She sat down opposite them. "Ms. O'Connor," Beatrice's lawyer began, a man named Mr. Thorne, with a smile like a viper. "You admit that you knowingly hid the existence of 3 children from their biological father?" "I admit that I protected my children from a family with a documented history of emotional abuse," Sarah said calmly, staring at Beatrice. "Objection," Thorne said. "Speculation." "It's not speculation," Sarah said, sliding a folder across the table. "It's public record. Beatrice's divorce from her first husband, the restraining orders, the testimonies from 3 former nannies detailing verbal abuse." Beatrice stiffened. "That is irrelevant." "Is it?" Sarah asked. "We're discussing the best interests of the children, aren't we? A judge might find it very relevant that the grandmother seeking custody has a history of locking children in attics for discipline." Liam turned to his mother. "You did what?" "She's lying," Beatrice shrieked. "I have the affidavits, Liam," Sarah said softly. "From your old nanny, Mrs. Higgins. Remember her? The one you loved? The one Beatrice fired because she hugged you too much?" Liam went pale. He remembered Mrs. Higgins. He remembered crying when she left. "This is a smear campaign," Mr. Thorne interrupted, trying to regain control. "Ms. O'Connor, the fact remains, the Sterlings are an established dynasty. They can provide opportunities, education, connections, heritage, that you simply cannot. You run a marketing firm. The Sterlings built this country's railroads." Sarah laughed. "The Sterlings sold the railroads in 1995, and from what my financial forensic team tells me, the money is running out." The room went dead silent. Beatrice's eyes bulged. "How dare you? Am I wrong?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. "I did a little digging. You wanted a war, Beatrice, so I did my recon. The Sterling estate is leveraged to the hilt. You took out a second mortgage to pay for the wedding. The wedding that didn't happen, by the way. Your investments in oil? Tanked. Your cash poor. You're drowning." Sarah stood up and walked around the table. "You didn't sue me because you love those boys. You sued me because you need an heir. You need access to my money, or at least the trust fund that the boys would be entitled to from Liam's grandfather's estate if they are in your custody." Liam looked at his mother with horror. "Mother, is that true? Is that why you wanted the custody suit?" Beatrice refused to look at him. She stared straight ahead, her hands shaking. "I have an offer," Sarah said, standing behind Liam's chair. "We don't want your money," Beatrice spat. "Oh, it's not for you," Sarah said. She put a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Liam, I am willing to allow you to see the boys." Liam's head snapped up. "You are?" "On my terms," Sarah said sternly. "No lawyers. No Beatrice. You come to Seattle. You stay in a hotel. You visit them at the park or at my house, under my supervision. You get to know them as their father, not as the heir to a crumbling empire." I would like that," Liam whispered. "And you," Sarah said, pointing a manicured finger at Beatrice, "you drop this lawsuit immediately, with prejudice. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement promising never to speak about my children to the press again. If you violate it, I will release the red file to the New York Times." "What's in the red file?" Beatrice challenged. "Photos," Sarah said enigmatically. "Bank statements, and a recorded conversation between you and Senator Banks regarding a certain bribe." Beatrice turned the color of ash, the bribe she had offered the senator to ensure the marriage happened. If that got out, it wasn't just scandal. It was prison time. "Sign the papers, Mother," Liam said quietly. He stood up. "Sign them." "Liam, you are throwing away your legacy," Beatrice cried. "My legacy is in Seattle," Liam said. "My legacy is 3 little boys I don't even know." Liam looked at Sarah. "I'll sign. I'll drop the suit. I just want to see them." Sarah nodded. "Then we have a deal." She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Oh, and Beatrice?" The old woman looked up, broken and defeated. "I bought the bank note on your estate this morning," Sarah smiled. "You're technically living in my house now. Don't worry, I won't evict you. Yet. Just keep the lawn mowed." Sarah walked out, leaving the door open. The sound of her heels clicking down the hallway was the sound of total, absolute victory. But while the legal war was over, the emotional war was just beginning. Liam was coming to Seattle, and Sarah knew that introducing a father to 3 boys who had never known him would be harder than any boardroom battle she had ever fought. 2 weeks later, the rain in Seattle was a soft, rhythmic drumming against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sarah's penthouse. It was a stark contrast to the sunny, manicured perfection of the Hamptons, but to Sarah, it sounded like home. She stood by the kitchen island, watching the elevator indicator light climb. "Floor 30. Floor 31. "Is he here?" Leo asked. He was sitting on the rug, lining up his toy cars in perfect chromatic order, a habit he had definitely inherited from his grandfather, though Sarah would never say that aloud. "Yes, Leo. He's almost here," Sarah said, her voice steady, though her heart was doing a slow, heavy thud in her chest. She had spent the last 2 days prepping the boys. She hadn't told them, "Daddy is coming to live with us." She had said, "Liam is coming to visit. He's your father and he wants to play." She kept the expectations low. If Liam flaked, or if he was awkward and cold like his mother, she didn't want their hearts to be broken. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Liam Sterling stepped out. He looked different. The tuxedo was gone, replaced by a dark sweater and jeans that looked brand new, as if he had asked a personal shopper to buy casual dad clothes just for today. He was holding 3 identical gift bags. His hands were shaking. He looked at Sarah, then past her to the living room, where 3 pairs of blue eyes were staring at him with unblinking intensity. "Hi," Liam said, his voice cracking slightly. "Hello, Liam," Sarah said, crossing her arms. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't offer a drink. She was the gatekeeper. "Shoes off at the door. We don't wear shoes inside." "Right, of course." Liam fumbled with his expensive loafers, almost tripping over himself. He placed them neatly on the rack, then walked into the living room, feeling like an intruder in a sanctuary. He stopped 5 feet away from the boys. The triplets stood up. They were wearing matching dinosaur t-shirts. Max, the leader, stepped forward. He tilted his head, studying Liam's face. "You're the man from the grass," Max stated. "The one who ran." Liam flinched. Yes, that was me. I'm Liam. Mummy says you're our dad, Sam said, peeking out from behind Leo. Like in the books. I am, Liam whispered. He dropped to his knees, so he was at their eye level. It was a humble gesture, one Beatrice would have scolded him for. Sterlings do not kneel, she would have said. But Beatrice wasn't here. I didn't know you were here, Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. If I had known, I would have come sooner. I brought you these. He pushed the gift bags forward. The boys looked at Sarah. She nodded permission. They tore into the bags. Inside were vintage collectible model trains. Expensive. Delicate. Not really meant for 4-year-olds. Trains! Leo shouted, grabbing the engine. He immediately tried to roll it on the carpet, and a small decorative piece snapped off. Liam's instinct was to cringe. He had been raised in a museum where touching was forbidden. But he caught Sarah's warning glare. It's okay, Liam said quickly. It's meant to break, so we can fix it. Can you fix it? Leo asked, holding out the broken piece. Liam looked at the tiny piece of plastic. He had never fixed a toy in his life. He had people for that. But he looked at his son's hopeful face, a mirror of his own. I can try, Liam said. Do you have glue? I have glue, Max yelled, running to the craft drawer. For the next hour, Sarah watched a surreal scene unfold. The heir to the Sterling dynasty, a man who had been groomed to run corporations and charm senators, was sitting cross-legged on the floor, covered in glitter glue, trying to repair a toy train while 3 hyperactive boys climbed over him. He was awkward. He didn't know how to talk to them, really. He used big words. He stiffened when Sam hugged him unexpectedly, but he was trying. Do you live in a castle? Sam asked, climbing onto Liam's back. Sort of, Liam grunted. A big house, but it's very quiet. Why is it quiet? Because there are no little boys there, Liam said. He looked up at Sarah. His eyes were red-rimmed. It's too quiet. Sarah felt a crack in her armor, just a hairline fracture. She walked over and sat on the sofa near them. Lunchtime, she announced. Who wants grilled cheese? Me, the boys chorused. Me too, Liam said softly. They ate at the kitchen island. Liam watched the boys eat, seemingly fascinated by the way they held their sandwiches, the way they laughed, the way they argued over who got the blue cup. They have your nose, Liam said to Sarah, and your laugh. They have your stubbornness, Sarah countered, and your eyes. Liam put his sandwich down. Sarah, I know I can't undo the last 4 years. I know my mother is difficult. Difficult is a polite word for sociopathic, Sarah noted. She's alone now, Liam revealed. After the wedding, after Tiffany left, the house is empty. The staff barely talks to her. She sits in the library and stares at the wall. She's terrified you're going to foreclose on the estate. I might, Sarah said casually, if she steps out of line. Liam nodded. She won't. I told her if she contacts you or tries to sue again, I'm cutting her off completely. I'm done, Sarah. I'm done being her puppet. He looked at the boys, who were now trying to balance spoons on their noses. I missed everything, Liam whispered. Their first steps, their first words. I missed it all because I was too weak to stand up to her. You're here now, Sarah said. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was an acknowledgement. Don't promise them forever, Liam. Just promise them next Saturday. I promise, Liam said. I'll be here every Saturday. I'll fly in. I don't care. I'll move here if I have to. Let's start with Saturdays, Sarah said. As the afternoon wore on, the boys' energy crashed. It was nap time. One by one, they rubbed their eyes and became clingy. Sarah picked up Sam. Liam hesitated, then awkwardly picked up Leo. Leo rested his head on Liam's shoulder instantly, his thumb going into his mouth. Liam froze. He looked down at the small, warm weight against his chest. A tear escaped his eye and tracked through the glitter on his cheek. He held Leo tighter, smelling the scent of baby shampoo and milk. It was the first time in his life he had held something that loved him unconditionally, without caring about his bank account or his last name. They carried the boys to their room and tucked them in. Liam stood in the doorway, watching them sleep. "Thank you," he whispered to Sarah, for not keeping them from me. "You had every right to." "I didn't do it for you," Sarah reminded him. "I did it for them. Every boy needs to know where he comes from, even if he chooses to go somewhere else." They walked back to the elevator. Liam put his shoes back on. He looked exhausted, covered in glue, his hair messed up. He looked better than he ever had in a tuxedo. "Same time next week?" Liam asked, anxiety creeping back into his voice. Sarah looked at him. She saw the man she had once loved, buried under years of trauma and expectation, finally trying to claw his way out. "Same time," Sarah said. "And Liam, bring Legos next time. They hate trains." Liam laughed, a real, genuine laugh. Noted. The elevator doors closed, and Sarah was left alone in the silence of her penthouse. She walked to the window and looked out at the grey Seattle skyline. She thought of Beatrice, alone in her cold, empty mansion on the other side of the country, clutching a checkbook that had no power here. She thought of Tiffany, who had dodged a bullet. And she thought of herself. 4 years ago, she had been a victim. She had been a runaway. Today, she was the CEO, the mother, and the victor. She hadn't just survived the Sterling family. She had bested them. She had raised the heirs to the throne, but she had raised them to be kings of their own making. Sarah smiled, took a sip of her now cold coffee, and went to check her emails. The empire wasn't going to run itself. The story of Sarah O'Connor and the Sterling triplets didn't end with a wedding or a lawsuit. It ended with a quiet victory. Over the next year, the dynamic shifted permanently. Liam became a regular fixture in Seattle, slowly learning how to be a father rather than a financier. He eventually moved there permanently, leaving the toxic halls of the Sterling estate behind. Beatrice remained in the Hamptons, a queen in a crumbling castle, living on the allowance her son provided and the mercy her ex-daughter-in-law granted. She never met the boys. Sarah never allowed it, and Liam never asked. The boys grew up knowing they were loved, not for their name, but for who they were. They had their father's eyes, but they had their mother's fire. And Sarah? She continued to rise. She proved that the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting. The best revenge is living so successfully, so brilliantly, and so happily that the people who tried to destroy you become nothing more than a footnote in your biography. She didn't need the Sterling fortune. She had built her own. And in the end, that was the ultimate power move. Wow, talk about a satisfying ending. I think we can all agree that Sarah is the ultimate boss for how she handled Beatrice. It just goes to show that you should never underestimate someone just because they're down on their luck. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, redemption, and secret triplets, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Sarah? Would you have let Liam see the kids, or would you have kept them secret forever? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on the next juicy story. I've got a crazy one coming up next week about a billionaire who went undercover as a janitor in his own company. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.